Historic Brawl is now a permanent queue on MTG Arena, and I have been playing a lot of it. We just got a brand new influx of cards via Jumpstart Historic Horizons, but there's a lot to know before we even start diving into what's going to be the new meta. Let's talk about 12 commanders in Historic Brawl that you need to know before we get into this, and the video starts right now.
Highest level of gratitude to our patrons who power the channel through Patreon. Check out the Patreon link in the description to learn about monthly giveaways, VIP Discord access, and even our official playmat.
Hello and welcome to the day. Thank you for spending your time with us. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. I'm Joel. We're going to look at 12 commanders for Historic Brawl. New favorite format. I've been having a lot of fun with it. But before we get into it, if you would, hit that like button if you liked the video by the end of it. Hit that dislike button if you don't. Let's jump into these commanders. First up, we have got Golems Tireless Pilgrim. What is there to say about this that we are not already tireless of talking about? The Golems Pilgrim comes in, brings a land out of your library, any land. It's normally Field of the Dead. It is going to also tap for 7 and give you 3 free cards off the top of your library, and that's a you may play them this turn. They can be lands. Lands are not duds. Golems ability always hits. It's so annoying. Like I said, a lot of times they are going to go and search up Field of the Dead, so things that are going to be anti-tribal tech would be really excellent. Anti-token tech is also going to be excellent, or just land destruction. Having a little bit of destroy target permanent in your deck is going to take you a long way. The more fun builds are running Maze's End, but honestly, Field of the Dead, Golems, ramp, that's a huge strategy right now because it's one-on-one commander essentially, and so just out-ramping your opponent and just playing these haymaker, that's a huge way to win right now. Golems is the king of being at the helm of that kind of deck. Go and get the lands you need, ramp it up, play a ton of spells, and just absolutely rock face. Golems you need to know you're going to have to deal with before you get into Historic Brawl. Same with Corvold, Fey-Cursed King. Corvold is fantastic. One of my personal favorite commanders. A lot of people who play him love him. A lot of people who don't play him don't love seeing him. Corvold is the king of being the commander of a sacrifice deck, because when Corvold enters the battlefield or attacks, you're forced to sacrifice something, so you might as well get some value out of what you're sacrificing. So lots of Blood Artists, lots of Bastion of Remembrance, cards like that that are going to give you value for your creature tokens dying. And whenever you sack a permanent, you put a +1/+1 counter on Corvold and draw a card. This is the kind of like a momentum shift that can change a game. You have green as part of your colors, so you're able to ramp like crazy. Black is a fantastic color in Historic Brawl. It's going to give you access to all the best removal, destruction, and exile for creatures. Red, also fantastic. Just a Jund commander that is focused on sacrificing and draws you cards is always going to be good. Corvold, the whole Aristocrats build, like I was talking about, Blood Artist, this is what my personal build of Corvold has in it. All of the Blood Artist, all of the Bastion of Remembrance, any effect that we can double down on that says whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life. That is what you're trying to build into it, and that's what you're going to have to play against if you see Corvold across the table from you. Know that Corvold is going to be some momentum. They're going to draw cards as soon as this creature enters the battlefield, and if they get to untap with it and also start attacking with it, they're just drawing more cards, just getting more value off the sacrifice. Corvold is definitely kill on sight. Another huge commander right now, and you can see me shaking my head. I don't personally play a Niv Mizzet deck, but it is so obnoxious to play against. It's essentially 5-color best stuff. That's all it is. Look for the cards that are the best and are 2-color combinations. Have Niv Mizzet at the top of your curve as your commander, and then ramp. It's another ramp deck. I'm telling you, there are so many ramp decks right now, it's insanity. Niv Mizzet is another ramp deck that ramps out the colors, casts Niv Mizzet, and gets card advantage that way. I'm talking like you can get up to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards on average. It enters the battlefield, you reveal the top 10 cards, and then for each color pair, you get a card of that color pair. In Historic Brawl, we've got Maelstrom Pulse. This would count. Destroying permanents, 3 mana. We've got Kolaghan's Command now, 3 mana. Hugely versatile. Lots of abilities on there. Mirari's Wake, and this is probably one of the worst ones to hit, but it's still fantastic. You're probably hitting a ton of removal. Clear the skies. Let your Maelstrom Pulse destroy everything, and then Niv Mizzet come through and just start swinging and attacking. You've got Hostage Taker in the 2-color set that can be found by Niv Mizzet. So brutal. You're just exiling a creature and then you can cast it, or an artifact, but most often when Hostage Taker's played against me, it's another creature that's getting aced. I mean, you've got Chromatic Lantern as a absolutely critical, versatile piece of this deck. So this would be a good target for your removal if you're playing against Niv Mizzet. Hopefully slow them down a little bit from hitting their colors. You've got Dryad of the Elysian Grove. This is another one. Watch out for this creature when you're playing against this deck, because this is the kind of creature that's going to turn on a 5-color deck. This is a creature that you need to ace. Hopefully you can slow him down a little bit, because this is one that it goes long like crazy. All of these, Golos, Corvold, and Niv Mizzet, what I've showed you so far, all of these commanders are capable and honestly brutal if you go into turn 7, 8, 9, and forward. The longer the game goes, the more likely you're going to lose to Golos, Corvold, or Niv Mizzet, unless you are very, very critical with your removal of their specific pieces that are going to slow them down or hamper their entire win strategy. Omnath, Locus of Creation's a 4-color commander that is fantastic. I've had a lot of fun playing this one. I've had a lot of fun playing against it. It's not super brutal, but I'll tell you, it can get out of hand if it is left unchecked. ETBing, drawing a card, free stuff, momentum. You're seeing the trend here of what the good commanders are, and the good commanders are to watch out for when you're playing. Then the landfall, you gain 4 life on the first landfall. The second landfall, you get 4 mana, and then the third time, you get to deal 4 to each opponent and each planeswalker that's not yours. A lot of times in the Omnath deck, you've got Risen Reefs, you've got a little elemental sub-theme, since your commander is and will really play well with ETBing lands, this kinds of things. You're looking at Omnath, Locus of the Royal also being in this deck. 80 ETBs deals damage to any target equal to the number of elementals, and then grows as you get landfall, and then you're drawing cards if you've got more. It's just like a baby version of Omnath, but one fewer color. And then Lotus Cobra. This card you're going to see in pretty much any deck that's running green. Like I said, ramp right now is out of control. There's not a lot of check for ramp because it's 1v1. I think that the format needs to be multiplayer as soon as they can handle figuring that out through Arena. Because right now, 1v1, it can get a little toxic. Lots of ramp, lots of go over the top, a couple of critical combos that are really tough to answer. But you're definitely going to see cards like Lotus Cobra, and I can't encourage you enough to just try and ace the Cobra as soon as you see it. This is going to be the kind of card that can really let your opponent ramp out of control. Now, we've been talking about ramp and brutality and just dropping a bunch of crap onto the battlefield and going nuts. Let's talk about the other side of it, which is control. This is historic Brawl, and so we can play Planeswalkers as our commanders. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, is a legal commander in historic Brawl. Just be aware of that. It's not that terrible because you've seen some of the ramp, some of the go over the top. It can be really hard to stop, you know, when your opponent is casting 4, 5, 6 spells a turn and drawing that many cards whenever they cast. But in this format, you should be aware that we have Wrath of God, we have Day of Judgment, and we have Shadow the Sky, and that's just the 4 mana board wipes. There's a lot of board wipe in this format is what I'm saying, and so you're going to want, if you're playing some aggro strategies, to have some protection against that. There's a ton of board wipe. These are just the absolute tip top of those options. You should definitely be running Teferi's Protection. We've got Teferi's Protection in this format via Mystical Archive. This is a fantastic card. I've had a lot of opponents go to scoop phase when they cast some board wipe. I cast Teferi's Protection, and they just say, all right, good game, and move on. This is a fantastic spell. You definitely will not regret using a wild card on Teferi's Protection if you haven't already. So on the other end of the spectrum, let's look at a combo deck. We've looked at some ramp, we've looked at a little bit of aggro. That's the control version that I've seen most effective so far, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. We've got Illuna, Apex of Wishes. A lot of times it's Ghidorah on the client. This is a nuts one because when I saw it for the first time, I just went, oh, a mutate deck that's got some freebies involved with it. That's okay. That could be fun. Illuna, whenever it mutates, you exile cards from the top until you exile a non-land permanent, and then that permanent goes straight onto the battlefield. I had an opponent do this, and then their deck started riffling through really fast, and I was like, what's going on? And then this hit the board. Then they started casting a bunch of spells that all cantripped. All of them let them draw a card as part of the casting. And then they were just going to town, casting infinite spells. Most of them were draw spells at the same time as also doing something else. And eventually they had almost played through their whole deck and they had won the game and I hadn't even gotten to do anything. This is a crazy combo, so watch out for this. If they go to mutate their Illuna onto a creature, try to have a removal ready to hit that creature. The Illuna's still going to ETB, but we're not going to get the mutate trigger. This is one of the more brutal combos I've seen. A lot of the other combos that I've seen are still brutal because we've got cards like Paradox Engine that are still legal in the format, but they're not centered specifically around the commanders, and so we're going to talk about those in another video. Make sure you're subscribed so you see that one when that one pops up. Rashmi Eternity's Crafter is one of the legal commanders on the client. I love this one because it's this little sort of cascade. Whenever you're casting your first spell, you reveal the top card. If it's a non-land with CMC less, you can cast it for free, and if you don't, it goes into your hand. So it's velocity and it's a little bit of a cascade if you can get free spells cast if they're smaller CMC. Rashmi's really good. Not that Simic needs any help with being good at commanders. I just think that Rashmi is one that you want to look out for. Try and keep off the battlefield if your opponent's playing it because it's going to get out of hand really, really quickly. Muldrotha of the Gravetide's the same way. I've played against a lot of Muldrotha decks. They're very good. They've got a lot of longevity. They play a lot of low CMC permanents that sacrifice to do something or, you know, get eaten up as part of some other cost for something, and then they replay those later on. I would keep a removal back if you're playing against a Muldrotha deck. They're gonna blow through their first options, all of their permanents. They'll be sacrificing stuff, removing your things, but Muldrotha coming out is really where a lot of their power is going to lie. So keep the Gravetide off the battlefield as best you can. That brings me to Brawl, Chief of Compliance. This is a commander that's got to get banned. I'll just say it outright. I'm going to make the next video, historic Brawl video that I make, be about the cards that I think need to be banned out of the format to keep it a little healthier, especially while it's one-on-one. If they go to multiplayer, that's a whole different game, but in one-on-one, Brawl, Chief of Compliance is absolutely toxic. It is brutal as a commander. It's very cheap CMC. It's going to lower the cost of your instants and sorceries. And whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you get to filter, draw a card, discard a card. This is the kind of commander that encourages a very toxic deck. That's in the wording of the card. You need to play a counterspell deck, and that is super, super toxic to play against. It's not fun for anybody. We want to both sit there and kind of do our thing. This is supposed to be a fun format. It's not a spike format. Brawl Chief of Compliance was banned in one-on-one Commander, the paper version of it. Take that as you will. It's not a widely played format, but they saw early on it's toxic and it's brutal to play against. It's so annoying to play against. You don't even get to play the game. It's all just counter spells, draw spells and counter spells. Commander, Brawl, Historic Brawl, whatever you want to call this, shouldn't be a draw-go format in my opinion. Brawl Chief of Compliance, be aware it's out there. And good luck. Maybe just concede when you see it and play another game. Chevelbane of Monsters is another 2 CMC commander that can get very brutal, especially if you're playing a creature-based deck. Look out for Chevel. This is another one that encourages sort of a toxic deck build. You've got to put a lot of removal into this deck. I do have a Chevel deck. It's not as brutal as Brawl Chief of Compliance or some of the others that we've talked about. You should just be aware of it. If you're going to build a creature-heavy deck, you need to have some sort of contingency for Chevel. Maybe it's just removal. I'm not really sure. Just know that it exists because I've played against it when I was playing a creature-based deck, and I was on this rotation of play a creature, they put a counter on it, they kill it, they draw a card, they gain the 3 life. I couldn't get a foothold in. They just kept removing after removing after removing, and they're drawing cards, so they're replacing their removal spells. Bane of Monsters is a really good one. The 2 CMC commanders, those all get a good look because they are absolutely brutal, as is Eugene, the Spirit Dragon. This is a card that I think needs to get banned. I've been very outspoken about this card being in this format. It's just so ridiculous and obnoxious to play a full game and it be going back and forth and it be a good close game of Magic, and then somebody plays Eugene, wipes the entire board clean, and they've still got their commander, and I mean, they've still got their planeswalker, and you're just like, cool, way to get to 8 mana. It can go into any deck. It has no color restriction, and know that it exists, and good luck when you see it. This is just a very brutal card to be in a 1v1 format. If it wasn't 1v1, it wouldn't be a problem. I think that it would actually be very fun and balanced to have all of these cards there, because you've got 3 other players to deal with any of these issues. Wiping the board with an Eugene doesn't just absolutely tilt all of the cards in your favor, right? Lastly, I want to talk about SRAM Senior Edificer. SRAM has been one of the decks that I've gotten the most success out of. This card is brilliant. There is just enough low CMC equipment aura vehicles to be able to play a very aggressive Voltron strategy. You put a couple of creatures in there that also play well with auras and enchantments and artifacts, equipments, and go to town. Have SRAM as your draw engine. You're dumping all of this stuff, hopefully onto a secondary creature, but I've also won with SRAM being the one that's suited up. This is a deck for me that's been winning by like turn 6 or 7. I highly recommend it, and you need to know it's out there. I have one more video for Historic Brawl planned where I'm going to talk about some cards that I think should be banned and maybe some strategies that can mitigate losing to them in the meantime. But let me know down in the comments if you want more videos on this format. It's a format that I've been playing a lot, and I'm thinking of covering it more on the channel if you are interested, of course. Check the description if you want some deck lists. I've left some deck lists for some of these decks that I've been building myself down there, so that you can have a starting place and a jumping off place for the format. Check out our Patreon if you want to get involved with the channel on a deeper level, and other than that, I am tapped out. I'll catch you later.